Hello, and welcome to a one-off spin-off of this series that you all know as the Battle Royale series. Um, we're going to be doing a South American Battle Royale because I kind of want to knock out all the continents. And South America has so few countries that this is literally going to be one video. I think Oceania will also be one video. So with that, let's get right into it. You know how the rules work. If you don't, I will link my USA Battle Royale episode 1 in the description so you can go see that. Guyana will be invading Northwest. Oh, and I forgot to mention, French Guiana gains independence from France, and the Falklands are given back to Argentina by Britain for whatever reason, just so we can make this scenario work. But Guyana will be invading Northwest. That is the first event of this video. And so obviously they're invading into Venezuela. And Guyana and Venezuela have pretty big beef, so this actually makes a lot of sense as to why they would do this. And so they will start launching their troops into Venezuela. And although Guyana is not very strong, fortunately for them, Venezuela is enough of a pariah that Colombia will also join in on the Venezuela bashing. And Venezuela's regime, which I don't think is very popular in the country, although I could be wrong about that, but it's definitely authoritarian. So if it wasn't unpopular already, the regime is going to get way more unpopular when they just can't handle this war because they're pretty inefficient as well. And obviously Guyana's doing pretty well against them compared to how they should be doing. And the regime itself is going to kind of start collapsing, and to try and save itself from collapse, it's going to just surrender to both parties. So let's see what the peace treaty looks like. Not exactly sure where Caracas is, but this is sort of a one-off video, so it's not that important. Uruguay will be invading North. Seeing Guyana's success against a larger opponent, Uruguay thinks that they can do the same, and they will start invading into Brazil, focusing over here, and they're doing pretty well until the Brazilian military actually arrives. And pretty quickly, Uruguay realizes that there's a reason they haven't invaded Brazil in their history, as within days, a pretty sloppy military invasion on Brazil's part annexes Uruguay for them. French Guiana will be invading South. So after seeing what a wonderful idea it is for a tiny country to try invading Brazil, French Guiana will do exactly the same thing. And I'll spare you the details. They get about this far before bye-bye, French Guiana. Argentina will be invading East. So it seems the series of bashing Brazil is continuing. But this time, Brazil has an actually formidable opponent in Argentina. And Argentina will be smart about it, starting by taking areas in Uruguay where Brazilian troops were more occupying forces than defending forces, and because of that, they weren't really capable of handling the Brazilian military. Once Argentina gets to Brazil proper, things start to slow down a bit more, but they use their long border with Brazil to ensure that Brazil is at risk of losing a bunch of troops to an encirclement, and Brazil withdraws to have a more stable front line. And at this point, Brazil's much stronger military is going to start doing some work, but Brazil is really tired after 3 consecutive times of being invaded. Even though these wars are really easy for them, they're still like, why are we at war? And so their military is kind of tired. Mostly it's their military, so they're not going to do as well as they probably should, especially because an unlikely ally of Argentina in Venezuela will also start an invasion into the northern parts of Brazil, which they were not even remotely defending. And although none of the countries around Venezuela like them, none of them will invade into Venezuela because they just don't think that's a good idea. And at this point, Brazil, basically the leader of the military of Brazil, will inform the actual leader of Brazil that it's best to just give the military a break. And so the leader of Brazil will meet for a peace agreement. They don't call it a surrender, but that's kind of what it is, with the invading powers. And this is what Argentina's new borders look like. And this is what Venezuela's new borders look like. The war has actually massively increased the popularity of the regime. Bolivia will be invading west. Bolivia has always hated Chile for having stolen their coast a while ago, so now they're going to take revenge by invading into the northern parts of Chile, which are just completely a desert and also not really defended very well by Chile. And they're going to get to this part of Chile where it is defended. And the problem with invading Chile is that they might be the easiest country to defend from the north. Like Argentina, obviously, would be really good at easily defeating them, although they could still hide behind the Andes, so I'm not sure how well it would go. But let's actually see, because Argentina will also declare war on Chile for no other reason than they think it would expand their power greatly. And so pretty quickly, Argentina moves troops into a lot of the eastern parts of the country that are east of the Andes, as well as into all of Patagonia, and Chile can't do anything about it. Chile is a bit worried about the Bolivian troops from the north, who just made a massive breakthrough with the help of Argentinian logistics. And Santiago is taken, and the only part of Chile that's left is not very populated and also taken pretty quickly. And Chile never even got a chance to surrender because the war was over pretty quickly after Argentina joined. Let's see what the peace treaty looks like. And both Bolivia and Argentina have gotten their new coasts. Guyana will invade southeast. So, wanting to expand their influence and realizing that the other two countries that border them are not really feasible targets right now, Guyana will invade into Suriname. Or Suriname, I don't know how to pronounce Suriname. I don't know how you pronounce it. Anyways, I'm going to pronounce it Suriname from now on. And Guyana will first take the region they dispute with Suriname, which I think is over here, and then they will start invading into the rest of Suriname. But before they finish, Brazil joins in, and they just quickly clean it up with Guyana's help, of course. So Suriname is gone. They might have surrendered, except for the fact that Brazil's joining in means that you would have to coordinate surrender with both parties, and both parties weren't willing to coordinate surrender. And this is how Suriname gets divided up. Bolivia will invade northeast. So it seems like the invading Brazil trend is really trending right now, as Bolivia will try and join in, and pretty shortly thereafter, Argentina will join them because they're pretty good allies right now, as well as Venezuela, who just wants to get revenge on Brazil. And Brazil is still the big bad of South America, so no one's going to come to their aid. This war will be much more devastating for Brazil than the last one if they lose it, so they want to win it. Unfortunately for them, Paraguay joins in on the war, and that kind of seals their fate as troops rush in from the Paraguayan front before Argentina can really even, or Brazil can even really make much of a thing into Argentina, which is where they were attacking first. And they weren't defending the Paraguayan front. And so even though Brazil is doing a lot of damage in Argentina, Paraguay as well as Bolivia and Argentina are doing a lot more damage in Brazil. First of all, they just basically take like the entire rainforest. Like this is the biggest brush I've ever used in this series. And in case you were wondering, Venezuela also helps, but the rainforest is gone. These northern areas are not really populated. Brazil decides to withdraw its troops from Argentina because it wants to not be invaded. So it withdraws its troops all the way to here. The problem now is that the most populated parts of Brazil are currently being invaded by Argentina, which is right over here on the east coast. The other problem with that is that Brazil is just getting pushed back all over the place. Venezuelan troops up here are also helping out with the north, as well as Bolivian troops. And at this point, Brazil will surrender once again because most of their land has been taken. So these are the new borders of Venezuela, Bolivia, Paraguay, and Argentina. Argentina wanted more land, obviously, but Brazil was really not willing to give up any of their actual valuable land. They were willing to give up the rainforest a lot more, so Argentina didn't get that much out of it. Venezuela will be uniting northwest. So over the past year or so since Colombia has invaded Venezuela. It probably would be a few years at this point. Colombia and Venezuela have been improving their relations, uh, and eventually they finally have gotten to the point where they are willing to merge with each other, and so that's exactly what they do. So Colombia Venezuela is definitely going to be a pretty big threat coming into the future. Peru will be invading southeast. The country to the southeast of Peru is Bolivia. And although it looks like Bolivia is very powerful compared to Peru, most of the land they just took is in the rainforest and also not defended by them. And also, remember that all of their coastline used to be Chilean and probably doesn't really care about Bolivia, which is the part that Peru invades first. And although it doesn't go as well as Peru was hoping, they still are able to take a lot of this land without much problems, without much issue. Bolivia will use their rainforest territory to start invading into Peru from the north, and it'll go pretty well for them, but again, not as well as they were hoping. So both sides didn't take as much territory as they wanted to take. Bolivia will start trying to beat back the Peruvian troops over here, and they'll actually ask both Paraguay and Argentina to help them, and only Paraguay will do so because Argentina kind of wants to stay out of it. And as soon as Paraguay joins, so does Brazil. Not to help Peru, but because they want to attack Paraguay. And so they kind of use helping Peru as justification to do something that they actually wanted to do, which is take the land back from Paraguay, while Argentina is not involved in the war. And so Brazil will start invading into Paraguay, and Paraguay was not expecting this. Most of their troops were out helping Bolivia, and at this point, things are not going well for Paraguay. Every now and then, Argentina will use Bolivia as a way to help them in their war against Paraguay, like logistically speaking. So they are invading into Bolivia, but no one's getting mad at them because they kind of said they were invading into Bolivia in the first place. And Paraguay is fully taken. They didn't really have a chance to surrender because they hope Bolivia and Argentina are going to kind of like save them, but Argentina's nowhere to be found, and Bolivia now worrying about their Argentinian or the Brazilian front and moving a bunch of troops east, basically withdraws from all of Peru and loses most of their rainforest territory, with Brazil helping Peru to ensure that that is exactly what happens. And so they no longer have most of the rainforest territory that they gained, I think, in the previous war that just happened. Um, Peru will finally invade into the rest of the Chilean territory that Bolivia didn't originally own. Brazil will use the rest of their border as a front line, invading from the Paraguayan territory, and at this point, Bolivia will finally surrender. And so, this is what the new borders look like. Ecuador will be making an alliance with Bolivia. So, Ecuador and Bolivia are both pretty scared of Peru, and with the exception of Guyana, they're also the two weakest countries on the continent, and so it just seems fitting for them to make an alliance with each other. And so now Ecuador and Bolivia are in the Magenta Alliance. Brazil will face a rebellion. So Paraguay was just invaded by Brazil, and they didn't enjoy it very much. And so they will start rebelling from Brazil, starting in the south and moving their way up north. And before they can even finish the rebellion, Bolivia will start invading into parts of what is modern day Paraguay to try and get some extra land from Brazil. And Brazil is trying to deal with the Paraguayan rebellion, so they obviously move their military down here. But it just keeps popping up again whenever they don't have occupying forces somewhere. So they have to keep occupying forces in all of Paraguay. So once they move another set of troops down here, this is a larger portion of their military, like enough to actually deal with the rebellion fully. And it does actually fully deal with the rebellion. But in doing so, Argentina is basically just fully being invaded by Bolivia, who takes a lot of the territory that was under rebellion. as well as some of their former territory up here. And so this is kind of transformed into a conflict between Bolivia and Brazil. So Brazil will just decide to basically just surrender and give a bunch of territory to Bolivia to avoid more conflict. And you might notice Bolivia just took all of Paraguay. So basically what happened is at the negotiation table, Bolivia demanded they get all of Paraguay. Brazil said no. Fighting probably went on for another few weeks, and with the help of Paraguayans, Bolivia was able to push out a lot of Brazil's occupying forces in Paraguay. Brazil realized they wouldn't be able to hold on to Paraguay anyway, and so they just decided to give it all to Bolivia in exchange for some territory Bolivia was claiming over here and over here. Ecuador will unite northwest. So the country to the quote-unquote northwest of Ecuador is going to be Venezuela, Colombia. And so, like, you can see how that is kind of northwest. It's the most northwest we're going to get, so just deal with it. So the reason they're uniting is because they have pretty good relations, both with Ecuador and with Bolivia. They wanted to join the alliance with them, but the way that the alliance was formatted, it was only supposed to ever be between those two countries. And so they basically just bypassed that by joining up with Ecuador and making one country. Actually, I could call it Grand Colombia. That sounds better. Guyana will be invading south. So in one last hurrah for Ghana, or Guyana, not Ghana, they will ask any country, basically saying, hey, Grand Colombia seems like they're going to try and invade the whole continent with Bolivia by their side. So if you ever want to not have that happen to you, help me invade into Grand Colombia. And the problem for them is that no other countries take that offer, but by making that offer, they've already kind of committed, and so they have to invade into Grand Colombia. And what they try to do is they try to go back on it as soon as they move troops in. They basically just move them out again. But Grand Colombia will chase them all the way back into their country. And unfortunately for them, Venezuela really wants all their territory back. And they don't even, like, they're invaded too quickly to even surrender. So they're just going to be fully annexed. We've made it to our top 5. Bolivia will be making an alliance with Brazil. So, in a shocking turn of events, Brazil joins the Purple Alliance. And no one really understands who's outside the Purple Alliance, which is only 2 countries, why that happened. But essentially, Brazil wants protection from the Purple Alliance, and the only way they could do that is by joining it. And because neither of these 2 countries wanted to unite with Brazil, they just changed the terms of the alliance so that they could have more than 2 countries. So technically, Grand Colombia never really needed to happen in the first place. But it did, and they enjoy it, so yeah. Peru will be invading northwest. So they will be trying to invade into Grand Colombia. And as soon as they start their invasion, which they're trying to take out Ecuador first to try and get them to separate from the Union and then maybe stop the Union. And they actually take out all of Ecuador pretty quickly. Brazil will move troops in to show that they are committed to the alliance because they really want to make sure the alliance actually helps them. And Bolivia will also move troops in to Peru, taking back their former Chilean lands. And Peru realizes they're kind of screwed as Grand Colombia takes Ecuador back pretty quickly and pretty easily. And following this, Peru surrenders. But despite having surrendered, the Purple Alliance still doesn't want them to exist anymore, so they will still be fully divided up between the 3 Purple Alliance members. 4 countries remain. Argentina will be invading northwest, so into Bolivia. So Argentina realizes that they are now the only country on the continent not part of the Purple Alliance, and they want to break up the Purple Alliance, and so what they do is they basically tell Brazil and Grand Colombia, hey, we're invading into Bolivia, you don't have to help them. If you don't help them, then everything will be good, and you guys will be fine. And then they say, hey, Brazil, don't you remember, Paraguay and what happened with that? And they say to Grand Colombia, You're nowhere near Bolivia. Why on earth would you want to help out Bolivia? That doesn't actually help you out at all. And so when Argentina starts invading into Chile, the other two Purple Alliance members come to an agreement that they will not help Bolivia out even a little bit, and ignore where it looks like they're invading into Brazil, because they aren't, because they have been fully kicked out of the Purple Alliance, essentially. So they will continue invading into Bolivia, and at this point, Brazil basically betrays Bolivia fully and actually starts their own invasion into Bolivia, because they realize they hate Bolivia and they never wanted to be in an alliance with Bolivia. They wanted to be in an alliance with Gran Colombia, and Gran Colombia has basically agreed to not help Bolivia. So Bolivia will be destroyed, not mostly by Argentina, but mostly by Brazil, with Argentina only taking Paraguay. But Argentina did promise Paraguay to Brazil, so I'm not sure what that's going to do. Let's see what the peace treaty actually does end up looking like. And this is what their new border looks like. Gran Colombia will be invading, and we know where they're invading, so I don't even have to roll the direction wheel. So the Purple Alliance is broken pretty quickly, with Gran Colombia deciding to invade into Brazil. And the reasoning for this is pretty simple. Brazil betrayed the Purple Alliance, so Gran Colombia is kind of upset at them. So they will start first by invading into the rest of Peru, and that goes very well for them. And then Argentina will join the war. And Brazil might be a bit screwed, as Paraguay is pretty quickly taken from them, and the most populated parts of Brazil are fully taken. And both Argentina and Venezuela refuse any non-unconditional surrenders, and Brazil is still not willing to unconditionally surrender. So things are not going very well for Brazil. Eventually, their entire coastline gets taken by the navies of the two powers, and now there's basically no inhabited land left. Brasilia has been taken a while ago. Finally, they're willing to surrender, but it doesn't really matter because at this point, surrender means full annexation. Here is what this looks like. There's probably only going to be one more event in this video, but there could be like a rebellion or an alliance or something. So let's actually roll. Argentina will be making an alliance with themselves. So that was a stupid event. Instead of that, let's do something else. Argentina, again, will be uniting Northwest. So in the most happy possible of ways that this series could end, or this episode, this video could end, Argentina and Gran Colombia will be uniting into one, and this lake will somehow disappear as part of it. So the border between them simply stops existing. And the name of this new union is going to still be Gran Colombia. So it looks like Argentina lost, but they just joined the union. They realized that there was going to be a war between them. They didn't know if they were going to win. I personally had already decided that Argentina would have won a war between them, but since they're uniting, I think it's fine to call the new union Gran Colombia. And that is how this series is going to end, or this episode, I should say. So with that, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below which other series you think I should do. I'm probably going to do all the continents, but maybe like anything else. And comment down below if you had Gran Colombia forming and then winning. We had 3 unities and only 2 alliances, so this was definitely a strange episode of this general series. But anyways, make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it. Smash that subscribe button so you don't miss it when I come out with the next series. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.